Here comes Peter Cottontail, hopping down the bunny trail. Hippity hop hop, hippity hop hop, all the livelong day. It's Easter time. Coming around the corner, we're in the middle of Holy Week. Hopefully you haven't been beaten and strewn with fronds of palms from last weekend as we celebrated the entrance of Christ into Jerusalem, the glorious entrance being praised and lauded by all the people, only to turn on him a few short days later and offer him up as a sacrifice, if you will, because the people needed this. They needed this bloodshed to save them, save their souls, allow them the entrance into the eternal kingdom. As we talked about last week, a God created in an image of man. Makes perfect sense, this whole ritual. Why wouldn't a God create a system in which we were destined to fail, that only he could answer, but decided not to, until he decided to make himself man and come down and participate in this world to show everyone the right way of living, only to offer himself up to himself as a sacrifice for himself to appease his own glory. Sounds like a lot of men I know in my life that have Christian. Am I right, Cam? But Easter, all the traditions we have of eating the ham because we've gotten off of our 40 days of fasting. It's a big celebration. The cute little dresses on the little daughters and the little bow ties on the boys as they go to church that day in their Sunday best. The celebration of spring is what really is behind it all. Because if you think about it, that's all Easter was for most people. Yes, they had the message of Christ and resurrection and the faith, but this was the time to celebrate warmth coming back into the world, celebrate the season changing over to something we look forward to more. The summertime bliss that we have. That's truly what we wanted. Is that any different than the ancient cultures of yore that would celebrate this after the equinox? And why is the equinox such a big part of Easter? Well, all these questions we're going to get into on why all of a sudden are we hanging a man from a cross and then a bunny comes around laying eggs and passing them out to all the children as he hides them in the yard.
I got an answer for that.
Candy has answers. And
They're probably wrong, but I have them.
We'll find out. I did research.
I didn't. I listened to my mommy, and I will tell you what she said.
But where did this all come from? Well, we're going to dive into it. Some of the traditions that we've all celebrated. Well, maybe not all of us, because some of us realize that's a pagan tradition and we shouldn't participate in this at all. This is not Easter based off of Ishtar. This is Resurrection Sunday coming up. So let's listen to this episode, see what we're going to celebrate in a festive feast. Just a couple days after we solemnly enter into the churches, suffering from the misery and torture of Good Friday, and through the weekend, reflecting on the sacrifice made for us. And as he rose on the third day, which is really about 36 hours of what he actually did for us, we celebrate the coming of it all. So let's look at some of the stuff we do, maybe not as Christians completely, but as a society in general. Why eggs? Why bunnies? Why do some people have bonfires? What does all this mean?
Let's get to the point, buddy. Start the podcast.
Someone needs to know their role in this thing. We'll look into it and get some answers today on Drop the Stones.
Hi, I'm Candy.
And I'm Dan.
And you're listening to Drop the Stones,
a weekly podcast brought to you this week by, I just lost my ad read, but I saved it this week instead of weeks gone past. We have a special one for the Easter celebration. Speaking of Easter, we all know it's got some serious pagan baggage. Right? From the egg-laying bunny to the bonfires that don't symbolize the resurrection, we're practicing celebrating the rebirth of spring. So, what do we do with all this? We cash in, of course. Introducing Rebirth and Company, your one-stop shop for all things Easter, or spring equinox-ish. For a limited time, get 30% off your pagan power bundle for a fertility goddess action figure, a wreath of mistletoe, a DIY sacrifice kit for your backyard bonfires, obviously. Just use promo code TheRealEaster at checkout, because why should the ancient gods have all the fun? Rebirth & Co. We're bringing the pagan party back to the Christian holiday celebrations. So that was a one-shot sponsor for this week. They thought they'd get in and cash in on this, so go to them.
Wow.
A good sponsor for us, really celebrating the pagan roots of everything. Sorry about that. A little technical difficulty as I coughed and flailed my arms about like a deranged lunatic. I knocked my mic loose and it stopped the recording on my voice, which
they don't care.
They don't care. And I put on glasses while I was doing it.
Oh, it's his grandpa look.
We're going to see a lot of that today. So, yes, they do care. They're always concerned, but maybe they wanted my audio to be off.
No, I don't think so. But nobody cares about the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, very few. Probably.
I always care about the behind the scenes stuff.
Do you want to see all the technical difficulties? No, it would ruin a show.
All right. Well, there's Candy telling me what's going to ruin our show is everything I planned.
Oh, you planned for that? You didn't.
I did.
Carry on.
All right. So we're going to attack. I know we've done Easter in the past before and kind of talked about all this stuff, but honestly, we never did research on it because that wasn't our style.
Oh, so you did some research.
I did about 10 minutes worth, yes.
At the end of that, were you saying they're celebrating all the pagan stuff, our sponsors?
Yeah.
And I know you're going to hit on this somewhere along this next hour or so.
You don't know nothing.
I know some things, and I'm going to share my opinions right now. My mom would say, I would point this out when I was a kid. I would say, like, because we were in like the Word of Faith, and if you don't know what that is, that's like my parents for a while, a good chunk, were like Kenneth Copeland followers, and what's his name? Dollar Creflo, which is a very
Creflo Dollar.
Creflo Dollar. T.D. Jakes for a while, though he kind of branched off for a little bit from, like, they didn't all agree with everything he was saying.
When he was going to the Diddy parties, he went a different way.
Was he on the Diddy list?
Yeah.
Was he?
There was some stuff there.
Oh, gosh. Anyways, so, I mean, he might have been, wasn't there two kinds of parties, like a normal kind of party, normal-ish for Hollywood, and then a really dark. He might have been on the other side. Who knows? Anyways, but she would say, I would say, how come, you hear people, we would say, like, out in the world say, like, like, be careful with your words, or like manifestation. It wasn't the word manifestation because I hadn't really heard that yet. But I noticed in the world there was this concept of kind of creating your life, right? Mm-hmm. There was this idea. And Kenneth Copeland was big on words. Every word you said had to be like I remember saying to my dad was in the hospital one time and I was sitting on the hospital floor. It came to visit and I was sitting on the floor talking to him.
They didn't even let you have a chair back then.
Okay. There was chairs, I'm sure. But
everyone else got them. You're like, no, get off that, Candy. Your sister needs to sit down.
That's not true. I'm not a victim. Anyways, I was sitting on the floor and I was telling him that there was some secular music that I liked. And one of the songs was I Swear by the Moon and the Stars. I don't know. It's some country singer. I don't know. I liked it at the time. And I said, but I don't say the word I swear in it because my dad looked at me, even though he was in the hospital. I mean, like, I don't remember what he was there for, but it was just like, that was a big deal that I didn't say I swear because we weren't supposed to swear. Mm-hmm. It included saying the word swear, I guess. I don't know. But I was very, it was so technical. You couldn't say you had a headache in my house. You couldn't, you had to be really careful how you said things. And
your
it really inhibited
speech. Your mom.
Huh?
Your dad was probably telling that to your mom the whole time.
Saying what?
You can't have a headache. That's why there's 8
That's
of
it.
you.
Probably like, you just need to do it, not say you have a headache. And she'd be like, okay. I mean,
I have a headache.
I know
rebuke
there
that
might
in
have been
Jesus'
some
name.
times.
You don't have a headache.
That was another thing we would say. I rebuke that. And, oh my God, this is so weird. Like, just even saying this out to the world, like it was like a magic wand, little fairy wand. I rebuke that in Jesus' name. If anybody said something I didn't like, I rebuke that in Jesus' name. And then I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, with me.
I mean, it kind of helped with your mental state because you didn't just necessarily.
But the problem was when we were dating, you were saying that like nonstop. That was your retort to every comment I'd make. I rebuke that in Jesus' name. I rebuke that in Jesus' name.
Why did you stay with me? What is wrong with you? Is what I gotta ask. Oh my God, was I really doing that?
No, because I'd say some offhanded shit all the time, and you'd be like. You can't say that. You don't confess that over them. Don't confess that over me.
My God. Oh my God. Anyways, I feel like old version of me would really think this version of me is an awful human being.
Oh, definitely. She would definitely.
Not like mean or terrible, just like
going to hell.
Devilish or something. Yeah. Anyways, but she always said, I would ask her this. I remember specifically asking her about this.
Your mom.
Yes. I was asking her, why does the world, which is anybody who didn't believe like us, right? Why do they understand this same concept that we're teaching in the church? Why are they teaching it too? And she's like, they took it from the church. So in her understanding, everything that all the pagan stuff came out of the Christian stuff. She understands Easter as Jesus set the thing. And then the bunnies and the eggs and all that came from the original story, which is Jesus. They were trying to damage the story of Jesus. Are you following my thinking? Mm-hmm. That is the logic and the reason that they use. And that is why they do not understand that, I know you're going to talk about like some of this stuff was before Christ on the cross and everything. And some people don't even know.
Christ on a cross.
A slur now. Now you got me. You threw me off, Dan.
Sorry. See, I rebuke that in Jesus' name.
I rebuke that in Jesus' name. I am on track. Let's see if it works. No, I still don't remember what I was talking about.
You're talking about your mom, talking about.
Well, yeah, but it was right there when you said there's. Oh, a lot of people don't know that.
See, it worked.
There's other stories. Yeah, there's other stories where not Jesus, but Savior dies, right, for the people before Jesus. Isn't there? Yeah, there's ancient. We should even do some of that sometime. There's like ancient stories.
We've touched on some of it.
Have we?
Yeah, Christmas when we're talking about Saturnella.
Oh yeah.
Or Saturnalia.
Well, so it's the same thing with this Easter when you talk about someone dying on the cross. I mean, Christianity is not first, okay? Christianity is riding on the shoulders of other religious ideas, just like Zeus and, all these other ancient. It's so weird. You hear atheists say, you're an atheist to a Christian. They'll say, you're an atheist. I'm just an atheist plus one. Like, I believe in one less God than you.
Yeah.
Or there's one more God that I don't believe in that you don't. That's it. So, I just think it's weird, but they don't have the understanding or the desire to even look into it because it causes doubt. And they'd have to go to websites and stuff that don't end in .Christ on the cross.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they don't have one that's called .cross, an extension. Do they? They
probably will. But no, and that's just kind of the problem with, and we've hit on this so much here recently, just the narrative that has to be controlled and manipulated, that you have to operate inside this bubble, because when you step out and start looking, you're going to start finding facts that shatter this house of cards that you're living in of the faith. And honestly, once we started looking out, it was true. We started breaking everything down. And there's going to be more examples of this today when you see your mom talking about, this ritualistic stuff came after Jesus to distract from it. Well, actually,
it's the world trying to,
as we saw on Christmas, it's going to be the same for Easter. It was the Christians assimilating these into their own traditions.
But see, okay, we're talking to people. Our audience is mostly people who are deconstructing.
Yes.
But this message, it would be nice if you could get it to people who haven't deconstructed, but you can't. They have to have a crack in there. They have to have at least some doubt in order for this to get in.
These shows that we do like this with the information behind it is ammunition for all the people listening to go to their family retreats and reunions.
Yes, that's true. Take it and use it, or share the podcast too.
Yeah. So when you go to your Easter celebration this weekend with your family and they're like, oh, yes, the bunny, that was just the world trying to distract from Jesus. And it's like, well, actually, the bunny came way before. And
it's just like, how do you get them to understand that, though?
And you can show them, and you can find resources on it.
Okay. Yes, you can find resources, but they've been taught to disregard all those resources.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like they have to, it's pointless unless the person you literally feel like they are genuinely asking you.
What you're doing is you're planting seeds.
Well, you can plant seeds. Yeah, you could drop the idea that, hey, there was a story before that. And if they're not ready to kind of receive that, just leave that there and let that simmer. Because that's something. It'll bug them at least. If nothing else, they totally disregard it at first. And
there's people we've encountered where you've said stuff to them and it shook them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go back to their pastors, husbands, whatever, and no, that's just fake. Well, and that's all the answer they get.
But
no, she's just wrong. It's like, okay, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because
but some of them,
my pastor said so.
And then sometimes the same person, they might hear it a different way from somebody else. They might have heard it from me or you, and then later they hear it from somebody else, and that person cracks it a little bit because they're a little more open. But we did some of the work by cracking it just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So this is how we all kind of work together by getting our stories out, getting our voices out. We're just throwing out seeds. Yep. To see, it's like the parable where you throw it on, maybe it's hard, the ground is too hard and it just sits on the top and the birds steal it or whatever. And that's the understanding behind it. These people that aren't going to hear us, but you need to know when you're standing right in front of somebody, if they're not going to hear you, they're going to fight.
Yeah.
Okay. And what fighting looks like with them. When you're talking to somebody, this person more than we do, obviously. We don't know them. So then you have to decide, is this worth continuing to throw seeds at?
Yeah.
Or am I wasting my energy and they're just hitting it's just going to go away right away? Yeah. If it is, then just save your energy.
Yeah.
Or, you can share podcasts like this. You really could. If you don't want to have a conversation, just say, hey, listen to that podcast and then can we talk about it?
Yeah. And then they can. So.
That's a possibility too.
And they'll give it 2 minutes and then turn it off like most people that we know.
Yeah, that's true.
It was evil. I couldn't stand listening to it.
Sorry. We're very evil.
Yeah, we're demonic. We understand that. So let's start talking about Easter. Okay. Candy, why do we have Easter at the time that it falls every year?
Not because Jesus died around that time, but yes, because he did.
Well, that's true. It is related to that. Mm-hmm. It's directly related to what holiday? Think Jewish.
I know. The Passover.
Yes. So keep that in mind where we're going to discuss how we arrive at it, because Easter doesn't fall on the same day every year. This year it's on 4/20. Yeah, it's going to be a good Easter, right? All right, folks.
Do you even know how to smoke weed?
I can't. I have to take drug tests.
No, that is not just the way you were acting. So proud. Moving on.
Whatever, dude. So if I were to tell you that celestial bodies were determinant of religious holidays that we celebrate, how would you feel about that as a Christian? That watching the stars. So you want me to
pretend like I'm a Christian? Okay, think like a Christian.
So watching the stars and analyzing the patterns and the moon cycles, that is what's going to directly tell you when to celebrate your Easter holiday. How would you feel about that?
I would say some
But-
people might think that, but I'm celebrating Jesus and his mighty resurrection.
because it's directly related to something. The official.
I think I agree with you, but I'm saying as a Christian,
Yes.
no, I would say some people might say that, but that's not true. It's about
So,
Jesus.
do you know how they determine when Easter is going to fall every year?
It has something to do with the moon, like you said, but I do not know.
Yes.
I think I've looked into this once before, but I don't remember at all.
All right. So you have the vernal equinox.
Okay, don't make this boring.
All right, folks. This is what I'm dealing with here.
Okay.
You have the
All
vernal
right.
equinox in the spring, right?
Yes.
And the equinox is when?
That's March 21st.
Yes, and that happens.
I don't
What
know.
happens on that day?
The days start to get longer.
Yep, that's the equinox equality.
So we have equal light and dark on that day.
Yes.
Okay. So
12
sunrise
hours.
to sunset is 12 hours exact.
Yep.
Huh.
Okay.
All right. Following.
So what the Jews did was that Passover was going to be celebrated.
The Jews were keeping track of that close.
Yeah, astrology has been an important
Well, I
thing
know
way
they
back
used
when.
it
So
forever.
they
But
had hell, when Jesus was born, the story was watching the stars and the wise men coming over reading
well,
the
how
stars.
are they keeping track of the minutes though? Because they just had like did they have the sundial minutes on there?
Honestly,
I guess like that
don't know how,
detailed.
but they had it figured out. And they
Wow,
were,
that's pretty
this
amazing.
is when all
actually.
basic math was already established and all this through before Christ. I mean, it was through the Greeks, which was after Moses, but they were understanding these cycles and that this was happening here. So anyways, we're getting deep in the weeds on this. The first full moon after the vernal equinox,
Mm-hmm.
the first Sunday after that, or actually it would have been the Saturday for Passover,
Okay.
is how they determine when Passover was every year. That's why it's always on a
The
different
first
day.
Saturday after the spring equinox.
Nope, the first Saturday after the first full moon
Oh, okay.
after the spring equinox.
Okay, so you might be on a full moon. Is it possible that you're on a full moon on the spring equinox or not?
I don't know how that one works.
So you might have to wait 30 days.
Yeah.
So that's why Easter is sometimes later and sometimes earlier.
It just depends
Yeah,
on
I've
the
never
full
really
moon.
thought when. I guess I've never really thought about what
Yeah.
it's being based on. Like it was
Yeah.
always
It's
changing.
based on the moon cycles.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay.
So there's a lot of
Is
astrology.
that the only holiday we do that way?
Yes, everything else falls on a specific date for the most
Well,
part.
that's weird.
Except for Thanksgiving, which is always the fourth Thursday.
Yeah,
but-
that one's easy because it's always the fourth Thursday. But
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out Easter. I didn't know what was going
Yeah.
on.
So Easter was that. And then there was a big debate on, well, do we celebrate on Saturday? And they're like, no, Jesus rose for sure on Sunday. So we're going to celebrate on Sunday.
Because they counted that as the Lord's Day.
Yeah.
Why did they? That's a whole nother subject, but it's weird that Sunday became the Lord's Day when
Well, it
Saturday was
depends.
originally the Lord's Day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of that goes with calendars and all that when you went to
yeah,
the
I'm
Julian calendar.
Oh, I
Instead
heard
of the
something
Jewish
weird about
calendar.
the calendar. Just as a little side note on a TikTok, can I share it real quick?
Sure.
There's actually, if you went by, there's an older calendar, obviously, than the Gregorian calendar, which we use and almost all the whole world, I think, uses. A lot of it does use the Gregorian,
Mhm.
but the calendar before that, way back, I can't remember what it was called, but it has 13 months,
Yeah.
and every month is 28 days.
Yeah.
It actually matches perfectly with, like, you don't have to do this 1/4 day kind of thing.
hmm
It's so weird. Why we didn't keep with that more simple system. But it was because a bunch of guys wanted their names, like, that's why, and notice that October doesn't line up with, Octo is 10.
Yeah.
December, Deca, or what is it?
Yeah. December's 10.
Is 10, and it's
Octo's
12.
8.
Sept is, like 7. It's supposed to be 7, but it's actually the 9th month. And those are all off because, like, Julius Caesar, they wanted like godlike names.
Yeah.
So January and, all these March, these are all like,
Yeah.
it's just so weird. Anyways, that's a side note, but all this has been messed with, is what I'm trying to say. This
Yeah.
is all man-made, all
So
of it.
the Easter holiday is basically based off of astrology.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In a nutshell to start off with. So there's some to throw at the old while you're digging into your first bite of ham and potato salad. Hey, did you know that this is all based off astrology?
No, I think you should do this. I think you should just ask the question and be like, hey, do you know why they pick Easter on different days every year? It's on a different day. Why? How's that figured out? Ask that. Start there and let
So
them guess.
we have a bunch of other things about Easter here too. So you think about it. Remember why was it named Easter and all that bullshit? We'll get into some of the intricacies of Easter and
I
the
know
little
some of the things I've
traditions,
been
but
told.
what were you told?
It was based off of a goddess named Ishtar.
Yes. So there is Ishtar, and there's also an Anglo-Saxon version called Yestor, or Eostre, Yastre, or Ostera in the Germanic tribes. And they're all pretty similar. It's just kind of like when we had Christmas and you had the Celtic celebrations, the Anglo celebrations, and the Roman celebrations of Saturnalia. They're all very similar in how they were doing it was celebrating the winter solstice.
Yeah.
And that was the darkest day of the year. So it was the end of the light and the coming back of the sun.
Wouldn't that be Easter more?
Well, this was the Christmas celebration was based on that. So they had all these things that were really based on the sun was coming back now because this was going to be the darkest day on the solstice. And now the days are going to get lighter and lighter and lighter. So it's the coming back of the sun.
Yeah, which sounds like Easter to me rather than because Easter was the first of the year. That was another thing in that calendar, YouTube or TikTok. They said Easter is actually it was April 1st was the first day of the year.
There are a lot of similarities between Easter celebrations and Christmas and what goes on. You still have mistletoe and stuff like that being pushed around. And it is a celebration because in Christmas it was a celebration of rebirth because days are getting longer. And Easter is a celebration of rebirth.
So I'm wondering if it's really, because it makes sense to have a celebration of rebirth in Easter time because of nature, how nature's kind of springing back to life, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. The days are getting longer. Their lives were evolved around when food would grow and they could work and they weren't like trapped inside because it was so cold, where we can do more things now because we have just some technology and conveniences. But I'm wondering if they took Easter and just made another holiday of Christmas. Are they really actually the same thing? Almost?
So Christmas and Easter in the spring equinox, there wasn't these huge celebrations like there were at Christmas time and the solstice. There were huge festive feasts at the solstice. Equinox, there's a couple smaller traditional offerings to certain gods of fertility because Easter is traditionally when spring starts coming, and that's starting to see the evidences of life coming back again. So you're getting buds on the trees in the northern climates.
That's why I feel like only the ancient people would celebrate that.
Yeah.
I don't see how Christmas would fit in. I feel like Christmas is...
Well, they celebrate it because they knew the cycles. So they knew this was so that was a post-harvest. You got all your stuff stored up. You're going to celebrate from the excesses that you have at Christmas. You're celebrating the days getting longer again.
But the days aren't going to get longer yet. You still have 3 more months of them getting shorter.
No.
At Christmas time you do.
No.
Oh, wait. It's December. Okay, wait.
Yeah. Solstice is in December. So the solstice is the longest.
Okay, that's right. All right. I'm following you. So December 21st, the days started getting longer. Yes, they would have noticed that. And then March 21st, the days they hit same equal, and now you're gaining speed.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Now she's on there.
I'm following you. I'm tracking.
So Easter is this fertility celebration because it's when you start seeing all the animals traditionally a lot of the animals start breeding in the spring. It's safer. You don't have to worry about caring for a child.
It's warmer. They're out.
All that.
They're not hibernating.
Plants are starting to sprout up again and reproduce their fruits and everything like this. Farmers are starting to get in the field. So it's a rebirth. It's a fertility thing. So you celebrate the fertility gods at this time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read you a little story here.
Okay.
And I'm going to moisten the old whistle real quick so I don't cough on y'all. And I'm not going to make a spectacle of myself.
No.
All right. So, according to the story, Sumerian legend of Damuzi, or Tammuz, and his wife Inanna, or Ishtar, an epic myth called the Descent of Inanna, Ishtar. Found inscribed on cuneiform clay tablets dating back to 2100 BC, so 2,000 years before Christ.
Mm-hmm.
When Tammuz dies, Ishtar is grief-stricken and follows him to the underworld. In the underworld, she enters through 7 gates, and her worldly attire is removed. Naked and bowed low, she is judged, killed, and then hung on display. In her absence, the earth loses its fertility, crops cease to grow, and animals stop reproducing. Unless something is done, all life on earth will end. After Inanna has been missing for 3 days, her assistant goes to other gods for help. Finally, one of them, Enkel, creates 2 creatures who carry the plant of life and water of life down to the underworld, sprinkling them on Inanna and Damuzi, resurrecting them and giving them the power to return to the earth as the light of the sun for 6 months. After the 6 months are up, Tammuz returns to the underworld of the dead, remaining there for another 6 months, and Ishtar pursues him, prompting the water god to rescue them both. Thus were the cycles of winter, deaths, and spring life.
Interesting.
Sound familiar?
Well, there's a lot of similarities there to the Christ story.
2,100 years before Christ.
See, okay, but I'm gonna tell you what a Christian would say to this, okay? Because I still remember what they would say.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, they would say it's a what did they call these? A Christophany, where Christ there's a picture of him in this story before he's actually going to come.
Yes.
Okay. How do we know that that's not true? Because that's possible. Okay.
It's possible. And it's not saying that there wasn't a person of Christ, but I think what it points more to is that these stories have been around for a while.
Maybe there's something to the story and it's not necessarily attached to one person. It could be attached to one person, but why is this story being told over and over again?
Yes. And by ancient cultures and throughout the world in different areas, there's similar stories being taught and espoused through, just different parts of the world.
So a lot of different religions are saying the same story, and we've got the Jewish version, right?
Yes.
Or the now Christian version, not Jewish, because the Jews don't believe theirs has come, right?
Yeah.
But a Christian would say the Jewish Messiah is Christ.
And the resurrection was a predictive prophecy, correct? So what is saying that the Israelites, because this was Babylonian in origin, the story, which was very much influential on the Jewish culture through the captivities and everything else, why wouldn't the Jewish people have picked this up and used it as one of their prophetic meanings to come? This is a story. We like this story. It shows hope and encouragement that something's going to come and resurrect and bring us back in safety. And
why wouldn't they use to point out that Christ was him?
Yeah.
Well, some of them did. That's what created the Christian group. But a lot of them didn't. And there's reasons that they didn't believe that he was.
I'm saying they're using these influences and they're using it in their own religious text.
Yeah, it's just another religious text with their spin on it. That's what it could be too.
Yeah.
And if someone's a Christian and they're a critical thinker, they at least have to admit that that's a possibility too.
Yeah. It's a weird, funky thing going on here where all these other these stories predate a lot of the Christian stories that come true and aren't Christian and neat. So
Christians will totally dismiss it because they'll say it was just a
I know what you're saying.
Story.
Yeah, it's God working in His mysterious ways through other cultures.
It's pointing towards Jesus so that people would notice.
And it really emphasizes everything we did. And it's like, all right, there's a lot of mental gymnastics going on here because to a critical thinker, it's showing that no, there's this commonality between everything else because there's something else that people are describing, and it's a shared story amongst groups of people because as you keep going back in history, the pool of people gets smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually goes back to 1 and 1, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first two people
So,
that understood, they were
if there was 100
humans
people
like
around
us.
and they started telling these stories and then it blew up and grew out and they moved away from each other, this story is going to be a little bit different than this story, but it's basically the same context and what's going on. So maybe there's something to
the
origin
original
story.
Yeah. That
It's
there's
just-
something there to
Yeah.
how it started. And it's just, but I'm still going to say that a Christian would
Yeah.
say ours is correct and it's the last one.
Well,
Is
of
it the
course they
last
are.
one? Is it the last story like that? Is it the last God that dies on is it the end of that kind of, maybe
kind
there's
of
something to
was,
Jesus. Maybe there's
because
something in that
when you
that ended
think-
it.
When you think of Christianity, that's when you start getting into monotheism.
Yes.
You know,
Well,
and
the ancient Hebrews were monotheistic.
They were, but you're starting to get,
They were the first ones, weren't
but
they?
they're starting to move to this monotheistic thing, and it's starting to gain traction over the polytheistic religions of the time.
Yeah. I mean, I have a book on that, like how it
So,
narrowed down to
yeah.
monotheistic. Even though these polytheistic these religions still exist, right?
Yeah.
In other parts of the world, but in the West, it got down to these three.
Yeah.
These three giant religions, all believing in one God, but none of the gods are the same God, they claim, right? So a Jewish devout Jew would not say that they worship the same God as the Christian or the Muslim. And the Muslim would not say they worship the same God as the Christian, and the Christian would not say.
Which is a bunch of bullshit because it's all the same God.
It really is the same
We
God.
just put a different flavor on it. Kind of like what we're saying with these stories coming out. We're just putting our own spin on it, and that's the true spin. And that's all Christians have to hang their hat on. We have the truth because we believe we have the truth.
We were born into this part of the world, honestly, because it depends on where you were born, what you would be. Because if you were born in the Middle East, you'd be Muslim right now. You wouldn't be Christian.
Yeah.
Because of where you were born. If you were born in India, you'd probably be Hindu.
Yeah.
You know, so you happen to be born in America, you're going to be Christian most likely.
Yep. So, so there's these other stories that predated Christ and kind of very similar to what he's going on. Here's a little something extra on here to just kind of see what the Christians did with all this knowledge. The Sumerian goddess Inanna is known outside of Mesopotamia by her Babylonian name Ishtar. In ancient Canaan, Ishtar is also known as Astarte, and her counterparts in the Greek and Roman pantheons are known as Aphrodite and Venus, the goddesses of fertility, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the 4th century, when Christians identified the exact site in Jerusalem where the empty tomb of Jesus had been located.
Yeah, they know it's the exact site.
Well, here's how they knew. They selected the spot where the temple of Aphrodite, Astarte, Ishtar, Inanna, stood. The temple was torn down, so the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was built, the holiest church in all the Christian world.
Who wrote this? A 9-year-old? The holiest church in all the Holy Land.
Oh, the Church of the Sepulchre, yeah, because it's supposed to be on that spot.
Where's this? In Israel?
In Jerusalem.
Okay,
It's on the tomb of Jesus.
It's called what?
The Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Okay, and so they claim that Jesus
this is
was
where
buried
Jesus
there.
Buried there. But it was originally the temple of Aphrodite.
Okay.
So how could Jesus be buried there?
I don't know. That's
so.
But yeah, and people have gone there and had these really intense emotional experiences because they think it's magical, but they don't realize how powerful their mind is to create that emotion.
Yeah, and if you remember back to our talk on Saturnalia, we were talking about resurrections and stuff there too. There are other resurrection stories throughout the world. You have Horus in Egypt, Mithras, he's worshipped in springtime, Dionysus resurrected by his grandmother. And in all of them, there's themes of fertility, conception, renewal, descent into darkness.
Is there almost always a death and a resurrection of some sort?
Yeah, it's a death, descent into darkness, a triumph with light.
Okay.
Coming out, light over darkness, good over evil type thing. So an evilness fell upon the earth, taking this person down. Then the light came and triumphed over the darkness. Good defeated evil and resurrected in here. So all these ancient cultures that were fairly familiar with understanding that they were polytheistic had similar stories. So that doesn't celebrate or help anything on this, but that's just where they come from. There's so many other stories out there. It's
that were before.
Yeah. So let me see here. Yeah, we already did the connection to Passover. So, I mean, like I said, there's not a whole lot of holidays or pagan festivals celebrating around the Easter. It's a spring virtual. So you're going to Inanna, celebrating her, doing sacrifices for her, Aphrodite, whatnot. So it was smaller festivals. It wasn't as big as anything else. Because kind of in that polytheistic, you had your separate gods that some people held in higher regard than others, so they would celebrate it. And then
other
So it wasn't this
people.
huge festivity to kick off the spring or anything like
Yeah.
that. They just got over it in the winter. But they would appease these gods at this time. And
probably do some sort of ritual of some sort.
And there's some cultures, I guess, apparently did bonfires for a while. And it wasn't a familiar one with me. I don't recall ever having an Easter bonfire. Did you ever have anything like that? So some European cultures would do it, maybe in Germany or something like that, where they have a bonfire. And that was directly related to this because that was kind of the sacrifice that was being offered up.
Okay.
So you'd have the fire and then you'd offer the sacrifices upon the fire, whether it be the meats or the fruits of the field. Or
do a lot of people, maybe that's why a lot of people grill on Easter?
Could be. I think it's just a nice day to go out and grill it sometimes. So
yeah. So I don't know.
But, and you think about it, because in our customs where we're coming off of Lent, which you didn't really practice, but a lot of the like Lutherans and Catholics, and then practice the Lenten season, which is a season of sacrifice and just giving up of things. So when you've done that, obviously you're going to have a celebration at the end, just like at how the monks were doing at Christmas time in the early church. They were, fasting throughout until Christmas Day. And then they had the 3 services and a big giant feast at the end of it. It was a giant celebration to end the fast that was going on. This is kind of what Easter has been like in the early church, where you had Lent to reflect on what was coming up and the crucifixion and the Good Friday and all that, to then have a celebration of the resurrection. So it's still following ancient customs. We haven't really changed, no matter how we want to identify it as.
We just do a different kind of ritual. The
Christians just hijacked it and called it their own and did something on their own and said this same, but you're still celebrating the same thing. You're saying you're celebrating this resurrection of Jesus in the renewal of life. Well, so were the pagans. They were just doing it more literally with
the looking around, like the literal planet is coming. It looks like it's coming back to life.
And I don't think it was any accident that the Christians put Easter on this day by any means. I mean, according to the story, everything happened to Jesus on Passover. So obviously it was going to fall here. Is that a major coincidence or whatever? Could be. Maybe I'm proving the existence of God more than anything else here. But it is kind of a unique thing that, okay, this is when we're going to have our giant celebration and the renewal of life, while the world is actually coming in to a renewal of life, at least in the northern hemisphere.
Even maybe from the spiritual sense, it was like just the divine kind of going through this whole story. Hey, we've been telling this story over and over and over again, trying to get this message to you that, like you're dead to this way of life. That's why all these gods, people started to walk away from these gods and realize this is BS. This God's not real, right?
Yeah.
And they had to do that with each of those gods all the way down to, in the Western world, now we're down to this one God that shows up in Jesus or Muhammad, right? But is comes from Yahweh or whatever, Jehovah or whatever, I don't know, Actually, I don't think Jewish people say his name or something. Is that still a thing? I don't know. But who they would call the Lord, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just now that last one being Jesus being the last story because, like, he's dead. It's over.
Yeah.
We were in the newness. Don't live like this. You're not worshiping a God anymore. That was the last one, the dying of the last one. Maybe it's supposed to be that kind of picture, and that's why we're not really creating new ones. I don't really, anybody who tries to create a new God now, like, yeah, they call some political figures like demigods sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, just like a half God, half man, which is what Jesus kind of would have been considered, right?
Not according to a Christian,
but I mean, in this day and age, after we have gained so much knowledge in 2,000 years, we are not the same people that lived back then.
No.
There's no way. It would be very difficult to create a new God now, right? That a whole bunch of people are going to worship. It would be very difficult to do. Jesus is the last one that's kind of hung on, and he didn't even say worship me, but it's the last kind of like demigod, maybe Muhammad, because he came after Jesus, right? Or have there been, there's been little pockets.
You have Mormonism.
Okay,
where they kind of steered off of the
That's true. Mormonism got pretty big too, or is pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's very large. So you've had some.
So maybe I'm wrong. Actually, maybe you could still. I don't know, but they're not dying and resurrecting.
No, because that'd be, if that were to happen today, someone would know about it.
That would be, you'd have to.
There'd be something to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is just a picture that people have used for a long, long time. This spring was, all right, now the light's taken over. The light has won over the darkness. Good has come over evil. The good
has triumphed over evil. Yeah.
And the good is now being shown out in the fields and the flocks because we're reproducing all of our.
And you reproduce in times of peace. Right? You don't reproduce in times of like sorrow. That you doesn't, a lot of times when you think of even the human experience, it's more in times of peace where families are together and couples can, have time to reproduce. So, that's a nice way to go into this spring or this Easter, since we don't celebrate, we're not Christians, so we don't really do that kind of stuff, but we definitely celebrate the idea of newness that Jesus kind of represents too, this life that life is, but nature represents too. So if you can go into it thinking that way, like good will win.
Yeah.
It will triumph over evil.
Yeah.
That's a nice way of just reminding ourselves right now.
Yeah.
I think.
So all this, I think, is just kind of pointing to this isn't an original concept to Christianity, to Hebrew in Jewish philosophy. This was interpreted by the whole world beforehand. It's been around.
Mystics have been talking about it forever.
Yeah. These celebrations have been going on for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And they're all celebrating the same thing. Again, it's the sun is getting more and more. Mm-hmm. So, we're all sun worshipers at one time or another, whether it be S-O-N or S-U-N. And that's, I think, what we're kind of seeing here is, the pagans are celebrating the return of the sun, S-U-N, and it's getting bigger and better every day now, more and more and more sun. And the Christians are celebrating the sun, S-O-N, because he rose again and conquered, and it's more and more and more, and growing up here. So, that's, kind of the main celebrations on what's going on at Easter and all that. So we have some other smaller traditions that we always kind of follow, which, can you name the two that?
Easter eggs and the Easter bunny.
Easter eggs and the Easter bunny, exactly. So where did these come from? Do you know?
Well, bunnies are like very fertile.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know, just that's why. Fertility.
Yes.
And eggs are a sign of fertility too?
Yes.
Okay.
Which goes along with this season. We're dealing with birth and rebirth. So, of course, we're going to pick symbols that show that in nature.
Why not cockroaches?
Well, you think about, you always hear like, oh, they, maybe
fertile.
someone always said about your family, your mom and dad multiply like rabbits. Right. You think about it, you hear it all the time.
But I'm like, why bunnies? Is it because, obviously they're cuter. Cockroaches are nasty, but.
Yeah, but bunnies are very reproductive.
So are cockroaches.
People are.
Really. I'm just saying. I'm glad they didn't pick it, but I'm just saying there's a lot of other things that are that produce very quickly. How about viruses? They probably didn't know about those yet.
No, they didn't in ancient times. Hell,
maybe the cockroach didn't exist.
Half our country doesn't understand what viruses are. So we have the bunny, okay? We have the rabbit, the Easter bunny, and the egg. The hare was a symbol associated with Yastre, representing the beginning of springtime. So you start seeing a lot of bunnies, baby bunnies coming around. You knew spring was coming around because they're getting after it. Likewise, the egg has become to represent spring, fertility, and renewal.
I wonder if birds lay more? Well, they lay eggs in spring, so
yeah. For the most part,
it wasn't about chickens. Yeah.
Yeah, most birds will. Yeah, chickens are like the only.
Chickens, I think, were like.
I think the only birds.
They were like human. Did humans mess to get to the chicken that lays eggs like that?
I'm sure they did because it's daily that they lay these eggs.
Yeah, I don't think that's what they saw. I think they were just looking around at like wild birds and noticing. Yeah, they lay
generally
eggs.
In the spring, sometimes again like in the summer.
Yeah,
they'll have another nest.
Oh, they will.
Yeah.
Oh,
some birds do. So the ones that are pests in my work. So the egg has been represented fertility and all that, which makes sense because that's where the chickens were born without even knowing how human reproduction worked. And the eggs inside women. So it was always been a sign of that. It said that Ostero healed a wounded bird she found in the woods by changing it into a rabbit. Still partially a bird, the rabbit showed its gratitude to the goddess by laying eggs as gifts.
Oh, that's cute.
So it's actually like the Cadbury Easter bunny that's going, bark, 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 and there's little Cadbury
it's shitting little quote unquote eggs.
Jelly beans.
Jelly beans.
So, that's just the mythology that went with it. This rabbit, it was an injured bird that she made into a fertility animal that was still part bird and started laying eggs as a gift for her. The egg is a symbol of fertility and renewal life going back to the ancient Egyptians and Persians, who also had the custom of coloring and eating eggs during the spring festival. In ancient Egypt, an egg symbolized the sun, while for Babylonians, the egg represents the hatching of the Venus Ishtar, who fell from heaven to the Euphrates. So where did the tradition of the egg tote and Easter bunny come from? First reference we can find of that is in German text dating at 1572 AD, and it says, "Don't worry if the Easter bunny escapes you. Should we miss his eggs, we will cook the nest." The text reads.
That had to come from before that. That's the first time they've seen it in writing.
Yeah, that's the first written documentation of it. So it
had to have been a story tradition that they were passing down, and then somebody wrote
kind of
something.
Passed on from these other pagan Germanic traditions. Because the injured bird getting healed and turned into a rabbit was a dramatic folklore.
Story. Yeah.
So it's probably just passed on down to that this became known as it. So from that, then, of course, capitalism and entrepreneurship, they started making candies shaped like rabbits to celebrate Easter, which eventually became the chocolate bunnies we see today. And eggs have always been important, especially in pagan cultures, because for all you folks that aren't in agricultural areas, if you take an egg that's freshly laid and do not wash it, you can store it at room temperature for extended periods of time.
It has like a coating of... Yeah. Once you wash it, though, you have to refrigerate it.
Yeah, once you wash it, then
and the ones you buy at the store are washed.
Are washed, and a lot of them are pasteurized. So it was a shelf-stable...
Oh, yeah, so that would be...
object. So a lot of times as gifts, people would give eggs or baskets of eggs.
Now, how did they know the eggs were not fertilized? Or were they trying to give each other birds? Was it a surprise if you got a bird? But you wouldn't want to crack it open because they wouldn't be ready.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You wait 3 weeks and see if anything cracks.
Maybe.
No,
Maybe that's where those painted eggs came from. They would paint the egg as they were waiting.
I don't know. Maybe they had candling like we do now.
Oh, where they could see through it?
Yeah. You hold the egg up to a candle and you can see if it's an embryo or whatnot in there. So they might have been doing that because they did have candles.
My brother once cracked an egg and there was an embryo in it.
Yeah, it happens.
That's absolutely disgusting. I don't know that I could eat an egg if I saw that ever again.
Well, that's why they don't usually allow roosters around the laying factories. So, but they were given as gifts because it was a sustainable source of food, especially like during the wintertime and whatnot that you can offer. And at Easter, they were decorating them for celebration, and they would offer some up to the gods and goddesses of whatever as gifts and pledge of sacrifice, or whatever you want to call it, and all that. But it was a traditional gift to be given. So naturally that got assimilated into Christian culture and Western culture of, oh, let's do this with the bunny eggs and hide them around. So we made a little game of it. So that's where these traditions come from. This isn't as in depth. There wasn't a whole lot on Easter as much as there was Christmas.
It's another way of appreciating just these little things that they're not tied to Christianity. So you can continue these traditions and not feel like you're being a hypocrite because you want to pull part of Christianity into your non-Christian celebration, let's say. You can still celebrate these things and not be a Christian, and you can still use them. And they just, now they have you have a deeper understanding of where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
So
and like every other holiday we have, it's become extremely commercialized. And
oh, very much so.
A moneymaker for a lot of industry.
It's capitalism. Like that's the thing that's more concerning than these stories point to something. We should be celebrating the earth coming back to kind of spring returning. It's enjoyable. The weather gets better. It's
But we'll wrap it up here and we'll kind of discuss something that was always discussed, at least in our religious circles that we were in, of these pagan traditions, because it was pretty well known that eggs, the Easter bunny,
it
was all pagan. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to celebrate this.
Some Christians don't do any of that.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, my parents,
your
off and on with stuff.
Your dad would go back and forth. Your mom liked the traditions.
Yeah, she liked it. She thought it was fun.
Yeah, she thought it was fun. Your dad didn't like it, so it kind of vary on who won that.
So it was never as enjoyable for her because he didn't get into it.
Yeah, and
actually just fought it.
And for you guys, it was kind of whoever won the battle that year was whether we're going to celebrate this way.
And we always wanted to. We thought it was fun. Get candy and we'd get a new dress or some shoes or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a point where a lot of Christians don't call it Easter anymore. It's Resurrection Sunday.
Yeah.
Because Easter is related to Ishtar or Eostre. Mm-hmm. So we can't celebrate something named after a pagan god, God forbid.
We can't say that word. God gets really offended when you say that. It's just, okay.
But we're going to celebrate it on Sunday, which is a celebration named after the sun.
No, it's the Lord's Day, the Son of God.
This is S-U-N, not S-O-N Day.
No, they probably spell it S-O-N.
The celebration S-O-N Day, or Resurrection Sunday, as in the Son of Christ.
They should do S-O-N Day.
Yeah. So they get so worked up and get all their panties in a wad. And I remember having these discussions or hearing your dad talk about it. Let's not we're not celebrating this year. We're not doing this. We'll just go ahead and have our ham feast and those.
Yeah, he's not going to turn down mom making a meal and everybody, And, that's true. It was always mixed. It was always just confusing. Like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard him, and I also really liked celebrating the things because it was fun times with our family.
We'd have the celebrations over here for a number of years, and we'd always organize an Easter egg hunt for the little ones. So we'd spend, the early afternoon after church hiding eggs in the backyard and then turn the kids loose to find them and get their little prizes and whatnot after that.
There's some good memories from that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was good times on that, and then just having the food and all that good stuff. And
then we'd just hang out and all of us would talk. And
Yeah. So
it was enjoyable.
And honestly, it was only a few of your parents' kids that ever went to church that day at the time.
Really? And we were some of them.
Yeah, your parents didn't.
That's probably true, actually. Yeah.
Their church was celebrating over at our house. Yeah. So, but they get all flustered on this. And I just remember all them teachings of, well, this is a pagan holiday. We don't need to celebrate it. But it's like, this is the Super Bowl of Christianity. So I remember, you'd walk into church and it'd be like the head music pastor. First thing he would say is, "He is risen.
He is risen indeed."
And then they start singing.
Yeah.
And that was the whole catchphrase and celebration that we
Remember
had.
when you first go to the church and you don't realize, and then everybody says it, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
That reminded me of like Catholicism, because in Catholics, you all knew there were certain phrases you said.
Yeah.
Were you taught those in school, or?
Yeah, you just picked them up as you kept going to church.
Oh.
So, you're educated. But,
Indoctrinated.
Tomato. But you had all these different conflicting things going on. I mean, even in the churches we went to, some people would celebrate it full-heartedly with bunnies and candies and all that good stuff. And some would be like, going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, whatever. You have your way, my way. But it's just another contentious thing.
It's another way to be like, which type of Christianity is the right one?
Yeah.
Because they all have their differences here. And some of them definitely think others are going to a very bad place if they don't agree with them.
Oh, definitely. And it's like, whatever, dude. Do what you will. I don't care. It's my way. But that was Easter. I know it wasn't very... a ton of information, but it's what's kind of where it come from. So if you ever had curiosities or heard half stories about it, that's kind of more of what it is with
you
the
could probably
Ishtar
even dig deeper and find more to it.
Yeah, there's probably more into it and all that, but it's just
if you're even interested in it. But it is, the point is, it's not a new concept. It's a message that has been there since probably the consciousness of man began.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we should just focus on what the story represents more than, who's telling the exact right story. But what is the main theme that they've all been saying?
Yeah.
And it's about this celebration of life, this newness of life. And maybe there's something deeper in that. Maybe it's not just about the planet, but maybe the nature is showing us something to think about in ourselves. Maybe when we think that we're at the bottom, like even right now in the political unrest and all the things that are going on right now, we think we're at the bottom, but there's always hope. Hope will always return.
Maybe it's something where we could focus on we're all, like on this, you're all celebrating the same thing pretty much.
Yeah.
You're just putting a different spin on it, whatever it is. If we could come to the fact that, hey, you want to call it this and I'm going to call it this, but we're still going to celebrate and we can do it peacefully. And we can just start uniting on that and understanding that.
Who doesn't want to celebrate life?
There's this commonality of message through it. This is through all of it, whether it's Christian or whether it's pagan. It is a celebration of rebirth in life, of everything coming back and growing again and reproducing again.
Things that were thought once...
instead of fighting over
dark and over and ended, there's a newness that's sprouting up. Yeah.
Instead of fighting over what details are correct.
Yeah.
Understanding the generic message behind it.
Yes, exactly. Which is the root of it.
It could be a unifying force for everything. So
if we could just mind our own business, celebrate however we want, if we want to celebrate at all, and stop worrying about other people, because we're making our own selves miserable by caring about how other people celebrate things or if they don't celebrate, right?
Yeah.
And in Christianity, it was just constantly, we've got it right and you've got it wrong. And if you're not doing it the same way as us, I don't think we personally did that, but a lot of people do in Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
You're doing it wrong. And especially the more fundamentalist you get, the more judgmental you get of other people.
Yeah.
Of how they celebrate or if they celebrate and all of that. So just celebrate spring, celebrate the colors returning to the landscape, celebrate the warmer air, celebrate just seeing animals scurrying about, celebrate I mean, I think that's something we can all celebrate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, renewal and rebirth. So
Yeah.
that's the message that needs to be taken away this season. Obey us and listen. Eyebrows.
Eyebrows.
So yeah, we'll conclude there. And just remember, go to danican.com, check out our website, get all the stuff that we have on there with Dan and Can associated, all our links and attachments, Candy's hypnotherapy, Candy's blog, Candy's Substack.
I'm going to be starting
Candy's OnlyFans. Candy's.
No. I'm going to be starting a subscription Substack too, where I'll just do a couple probably different blogs throughout the month, just a couple more in a month that are more detailed, more in depth, and then also maybe an audio, like a hypnotherapy, some imagery audio, and maybe some like a PDF or something that I want to share, but that will be for subscribers only.
Yep.
So that'll be coming in the future.
Check that all out at danican.com. Very importantly, go to whatever audio device you're listening to. If you're not following us, follow us. That helps out a ton. Rate us if you haven't rated us yet. That helps out even more. And if you have a moment, leave a comment.
And
that helps out a ton.
Share it. Like, follow, share.
Yep.
Comment, all the things.
So if you can do all that for us, you'll make our Easter glorious. Extra eggs to you. And speaking of eggs, what's your favorite egg at Easter?
I love the Snickers egg, but I don't know that they have it anymore.
Yeah, I love the
Reese's peanut butter ones.
You know what I love?
You love the caramel Cadberries.
That's right, girlfriend.
Yes.
So, with that being said, YouTube, if you're following on there, like and subscribe. Hit that like button.
I will say
smash that
Easter has the
subscribe.
best candy, wouldn't you?
What's that?
Easter has the best candy.
Oh, by far.
Yeah.
By far.
It does have good candy.
It's always
I'm not a huge candy eater, but I do like Easter candy. It's the best.
Yeah, it's the best. So, yeah, like and subscribe on YouTube. We'd appreciate that also. And as always,
listen to us.
We got a couple facts here and there.
Maybe. Bye.
Bye.